Welcome to Two Girls Talk Transits with our hosts.
Hi, I'm Maddie delrae. I'm a professional practicing astrologer with a focus more on Hellenistic traditional astrology and with an intense love and desire for predictive transiting astrology.
And I'm Kaleigh Smith. I'm a healing coach and art therapy grad student with a slight obsession with reading the stars. I combine astrology, spirituality, and traditional psychology to help people live with intention. Without further ado, we welcome you to Two Girls Talk Transits, where we talk about all the upcoming astrological transits and what you can do to keep yourself sane and absolutely aligned.
Hello and welcome to the next episode of Two Girls Talk Transits. Today we're reviewing the astrology from July 14th through July 20th, and we're your host. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Kaleigh.
And let's get started. So this is a big week that I think these are going to bring up a lot of energies that we haven't felt since April, when we had the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. But on the 15th of July, we are starting out with Mars in Taurus meeting Uranus in Taurus, which is traditionally and historically been a very explosive and sort of jarring aspect, especially in Taurus, where things don't like a lot of change or a lot of adjustments.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mars and Uranus conjunct about every 2 years. But Uranus hasn't been in Taurus since the 40s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Uranus takes very long time to transit through the zodiacal wheel. I think it's like how many
80 something, 80, it's almost 90 years because you can usually hit your Uranus return around 80 to 88 or so.
That's an interesting time.
Yeah.
Late in life. Yeah. Um Yeah, so we are seeing Mars and Uranus conjunct like we did in the early 40s, and that was about the time that we had World War II, but it had first conjuncted in that sign 3 years before the war started. What was it, 1936?
Yeah. So it first conjuncted then and then kept conjuncting, and the war didn't end until after some conjunctions in Gemini as well. So we're very much so gearing up in the same sort of energetic place because I mean, we had our first conjunction in January 2021, which coincided with that whole January 6th like nonsense. And then the next one happened in August of 2022. This will be, I think we have one or two more, and then we move into Gemini, which Uranus in Gemini is the United States Uranus return.
Mm-hmm.
So we know from the 50s when Uranus was in Gemini coincided a lot with a boom, for one, like there was the whole boom from the war, but there was also the Cold War and the tensions and the big rise of nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
Of us versus them, our country versus them, and really solidifying it being our natal placement as a country, really solidifying that. I think we are seeing the challenges since 1940s, of what has worked from that hyper capitalistic birth. I mean, really, that was the birth of like extreme capitalism, or what we would call like late stage capitalism after World War II,
Mm-hmm.
because we went up against like seeing communism as the enemy and really solidified capitalism's stronghold in our democracy. And I think we are now seeing the challenges of that.
Yeah, the challenges that capitalism brings. So I wonder if there's going to be some kind of reform in that. I find it interesting because Taurus is the sign that happens before we reach our Uranus return.
Right.
So in a way, it kind of serves as like that final, I don't know, that like final lesson that we need to integrate before we come into the new like energetic cycle, you know?
Yeah, like the new ideas, like we see what breaks first and like what's not working before we realize that we have to be more eccentric and be more creative about the direction forward. So yeah, it is that critical kind of period of time collectively. I mean, I
Mhm.
don't know. I have not been paying attention to the news. I'm going to be honest. I've just been unable to
I don't think you're
digest
missing
that.
out. Yeah.
I
Mm-mm.
mean, I know we've had a lot of really rough Supreme Court rulings, and the future does not look bright over here. So I have just not been engaging in it. So truly don't really want to know, but for astrological reasons, I do think some sort of like something definitely political in terms of a foundation, but also, I mean, all the talk about inflation, something has to change
Yeah.
that way. Being an election year, we're usually supposed to have good economies during election years. That's the whole point of it being rigged, is that when they want to get reelected, they'd make it better. But it's like not really hitting the average American. So I think some sort of disruption to the economy, potentially some sort of disruption to just like, this is not working out as a society, as what we
Mhm.
need to be doing.
Yeah, I feel like too we might see like reform on like presidents themselves too, like who we kind of allow to run for presidency. We might, I mean, I'm not sure how much
I don't think it would happen in
power.
this cycle, but I
Yeah.
think that's definitely a conversation that's happening. Like, hey,
Mhm.
this is dumb.
Yeah. Yeah. I could definitely see there being some sort of like reform to that.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so it is a lot. It is a disruption though. And like that's what you can take for yourself personally is, what have you been chugging along with that has been, kind of getting to a point where it's about to break or it's about to disrupt and explode and kind of need to reach this peak releasing energy. Like it is a very unstable energy, Mars and Uranus is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think already like you might be feeling the shock waves of this. So, I feel like the energy is on a rise, as it comes up to meet the peak point that will happen on what was it, the 15th, I think.
Yeah.
Um yeah, you might be already feeling like this energy coming up, and look to where you have Taurus in your chart, to where you'll be experiencing this like big shift or change. Mars is like fueling the fire. It's like there's Uranus has like a small fire of change, but Mars comes to like ignite it and make it really big. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's like you aren't going to be able to control or like aim this energy very
Yeah.
well too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like especially just because Mars is not helpful in this sign. So when Mars is not helpful, like it's not very much a control of its direction or how it's like moving forward with energy. And so when you add that in terms of a planet that's also extremely uncontrollable and chaotic, it
Mhm.
is just like absolute disaster.
Yeah, and it's triggering it's triggering the sign of Taurus because Taurus wants to be predictable, it wants to be stable, it wants to be able to control and, just have all of its like ducks in a row, and it can't do that with these two energies there.
Yeah, not at all. It's
Mhm.
definitely challenged, right? But I also think it's not, I will say just to point, like it's not something we haven't experienced yet. Like the
Yeah.
Jupiter Uranus conjunction in April, late April, was significant and was a big kind of energetic push of that energy. So like of what that experience and what that looks like in your life. So
Hmm.
this is not a new story, I would say. I think this is something that you've been working on since the spring, but it is reaching this kind of peak explosive accumulation point.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. We did have an earlier Mars Uranus conjunction in Taurus as well. That happened August 1st, 2022, and one before that, January 20th, 2021. So you can do some personal reflection and kind of see what was going on in your life at that time to see maybe what themes came up, what were you working through, and then kind of see, is that energy presenting similar to those previous times when this one comes around?
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, for me, it is very similar. So
Mm.
fitting.
Oh my goodness, now I'm just thinking. Oh no.
What happened in August for you, Kaleigh?
I moved. I had a big move. And yeah,
Oh no.
I moved from Asia to back to the United States.
Oh wow. And
Oh
what have
wait,
we been talking about? Oh, that was before.
wait, no. That happened the year before. That happened the year before. I think that point. Oh no, I moved to Vietnam. Moved to Vietnam. Yeah.
Mm, there
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah. So I was definitely like moving around a bit, playing with different things. I've been talking a lot lately about potentially moving. So that's why I was like, oh no, because I don't want to move at this point. But, anyways, that's a side note.
But yeah, I mean, even if those dates don't trigger something, yeah, just think back to what was really a big focus of your life in April, because I think that's the kind of completion. But all of this to say is to not get you concerned or work up. I do think there's some element of us accepting or wanting these energies, just because we also, on around the same time this week, on the 18th of July, the sun that's in Cancer makes that sextile to Uranus. So it's not like this is catching you on the blind side out of nowhere. You have no idea that this was coming. You had no idea that this was like, there is some awareness, right, of sun sextiling Uranus, like, oh, I do see this and I do recognize that this change has to happen in my life. Can I also recognize that I have no control over it?
Yeah. You might just be getting that energy to like, yeah, kind of like you said, accept or like really be like, okay, like this is a necessary thing that has to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
You
yeah.
can see.
No, go
Okay.
ahead.
I mean, it's just that like the sun sextiling Uranus, it is a softer aspect, but whenever we have aspects like this, is something the sun has been witnessing Mars through Mars's journey in Taurus, not perfectly the whole time, but through this latter half of Taurus's time. So the sun knows, like, you know what's changing, you know what you're moving towards, you know what you're not continuing. It's just more of being willing to allow it to happen in a way that you can't control.
Yeah, it kind of might like come from like I think it's been something maybe that has taken up space in the back of your mind, but then it kind of like comes into like, oh, this is like in picture now. Like I kind of really understand and it's coming to the forefront. Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming into manifestation
Yeah.
ultimately, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
So you get to deal with that for the first bit of the week and figure out what you are releasing a lot of control and taking a lot of action on. And then on the 19th of July, Venus, who is a head in Leo, makes this trine to the North Node in Aries. These aspects are, not very obvious, I think, but I think there's, again, this is just adding this little bit of alignment up to, I'm moving into something that I want to create. I'm moving into something that I desire. And perhaps all this change is helping me express myself more authentically with the path that I need to take in life right now.
Yeah, yeah. I was, yeah. I'm on the same thought pattern as you. It's like we've had this big change, and maybe it was something that we didn't really want at first, or it was kind of unwarranted because we couldn't really control it. But then we're realizing like the implications of that change might actually be lining us up for our soul purpose or soul path or whichever way we're supposed to be going in the future. And if it weren't for that change, maybe we wouldn't be able to go in that direction.
Yeah, exactly. And it's an emergence like, oh, this is clicking, right? Too. And then with Venus being in Leo is how can this be more fun or more of an adventure of like a self-expression? Like, how can you take this new opportunity ultimately, right? Like that's all change is this opportunity for you to express yourself differently through it or kind of change your attitude about it. Perhaps if you went into it with a much more negative kind of connotation, being more accepting of this opportunity, this path that's now in front of you instead.
Yeah. Yeah. Like how does it change how you express yourself maybe in a more self-loving way, self-accepting way? Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Very cool.
exactly. So, and then we just kind of, it's softer this week, but I think because we're all just cleaning up the Mars, Uranus conjunction,
Mhm.
on the 20th of July. Mars will then sextile Neptune real quick. And we are not talking about the full moon until next week, but I just like pointing out that like the outer planets are really all being activated these 2 weeks or so in different ways. Like the week before this, Venus was opposite Pluto. And
Mhm.
then we have the Mars Uranus conjunction. And then we have these other planets making aspects. And then this full moon that's coming up is going to be triggering both Neptune and Pluto as well.
Mhm.
So there's so much that's going on, even if we're talking about this personally, there's so much that's going on that is just kind of outer worldly or out of your
Mhm.
control. Like I've been reading a lot of horror books, which I still don't know how I feel a lot about a lot of that. But
Mhm.
they do talk a lot about using the outer planets and how they just act and they function as things that just kind of work outside of your understanding.
Mhm.
Like it's just that force, that universal force or that God force is really flows through the outer planets.
Mhm. Yeah, I could absolutely see that. Um, yeah, because the outer planets, like I feel like when they're aspected, I mean, it depends because Pluto, I tend to feel that one a lot, but sometimes I don't necessarily feel it personally, but like you mentioned, it's reflected in the outer world. So I think that maybe to your point, when we experience this Mars sextile Neptune, it might be just something that's happening outside of us or outside of, you know, our immediate
Mhm.
environment. Um, yeah, it's interesting. You can keep an eye on like on things, see what happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like if this change was like really harmful or negative to you in some way, or, a loss of job or loss of family, the hardships that we deal with. I think these outer planets following that and this Mars sextiling Neptune is just a reminder of like what you are just a tiny little speck. You are just a tiny little role in this grand orchestra of this play that is life on Earth. Like, yes, that's significant and insignificant at the same time. So it's kind of sort of a reminder of just how this matters, but in the grand scheme of things, it's necessary and important, and it will shift and change to a way that's more constructive for you, most likely.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really good point actually, because, I feel like we tend to like personalize everything, like, oh, everything's about me, but like you mentioned, we don't know like how the one thing that happens to us could be like by proxy affecting somebody else in our life. And, we're all connected. So, yeah, we could just be like, or, the thing that happens to us, say we experience that big change, it was a loss of job, that could actually serve as a lesson for somebody else that's close in our life. And, we are, I think, maybe coming to terms with the fact that not everything is, number one, able to be controlled, but number two, we just can't like assess, is it a good or bad? We just kind of got to be like, it just kind of is what it is. And it serves a purpose that Neptune, maybe I can't see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like it's not that it's any sort of like it may be bad for you, but good for you long term, or bad for you now, but good for somebody else, or
Mm.
good for you, but bad for somebody else. That's why good and bad, these labels aren't ultimately helpful in the long term because Neptune is that oneness that we have, the belief that we don't live in a vacuum, that we aren't just the one person here, but we are everyone and everything. And there is that sort of recognition that, just because it sucks for you, it's like it's just also not, there's a purpose for it too, in some way. And the impact you make, it's like that long-term ripple effect.
Yeah, maybe Neptune's wanting you to like tap into that, like don't be so short-sighted, like realize that there are other people, you exist with and that things are happening too as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So and that's just some energies to be keeping in mind through just this week and next week as well. And even when you're listening to this from the prior week, because I just think when we're shifting these signs, like all these outer planets are kind of in these later critical or very early degrees. So there is a lot of shifting collectively that we just can't comprehend fully, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I think all of us are like mind blown at this point. We're kind of just like information overload. I don't know how to manage anything
Yeah.
at this point. I mean, I know that's what I'm feeling, and I think people could be potentially feeling similar things. Yeah.
Yes, it definitely. So
Mm-mm.
that we kind of in their note then this week, also on the 20th, right before that full moon in Capricorn, is Mars enters Gemini.
Yeah.
I mean, I will take it. Mars will be out of detriment and it won't be like so stinking slow.
Yeah,
Um,
true.
but
Mm-hmm.
it will also be now moving so fast, it's going to miss a lot of details and be more chaotic and ungrounded. But
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of struggle with Gemini energy a bit because, like you said, it's kind of like it's like that, I don't know why I think about it like this, but that like mom who runs around the house with like an ongoing to-do list. But it's
yeah,
it's just like kind of her hair is crazy. She kind of has like Einstein hair and like I feel like
yeah,
that's kind of like Mars and Gemini. Like it's just kind of like this energetic force that wants to go in all directions, but
yeah.
really is not grounded in any one solid path.
It is not. And it is a very, positive side here, very creative, very much a sort of all doing all things, jack of all trades, learning all the new things. If you do need to multitask a lot, Mars and Gemini is good for that. It's good for a lot of fast communicative work. So writing a lot or talking really fast or spreading a lot of information really quickly. But it is not good for long-term, slow, steady work or projects, you
Yeah.
know.
I think Mars and Gemini could also be prone to some errors. So just because it's like lacking that, yeah, it's just lacking that stability and that like, groundedness. So I think I would just be mindful of like how fast you're moving through things. While it could be really great, like you could really pick up pace on things that you've been wanting to put energy into that have been really slow with Mars and Taurus. Um, just be like mindful to just like double check before you like blow through things.
Sure. Yes,
Mhm.
I agree. I was pulling up my ephemeris because it was very recent. It's not recent, it's 2 years ago, jeez. But still, in October of 2022 through what was it, January 2023, Mars was retrograde in Gemini. We had like 6 months of Mars in Gemini in 2022 and early 2023. So if you are dying to know what Mars and Gemini is going to bring you, this will be a much watered down version of that period of time.
Wait, can you tell me the dates again? What was it?
It was October 2022, like the very end of October. It was retrograde from then to January 2023, like mid-January, but it
Mhm.
was in Gemini like from that fall of 2022 all the way till freaking April, end of March of 2023. So
That's a
it
long
was like
time.
6 months of Mars and Gemini from late 2022, early 2023.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, so that would also be an interesting time to reflect on.
Yes. You're not gonna get that extreme long-term retrograde cycle of Mars and Gemini, but it is that's the last time we had Mars and Gemini. So this is a refresh of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Nice. So yeah, next week, we'll be talking about the moon. What was it? A new moon or full moon? I didn't check.
Full moon in Capricorn,
Okay, full moon in Capricorn. Yeah.
the second one. Yes.
Oh,
And continuing on with the planets moving into Leo season next week. So that'll be nice.
oh, get
Yeah.
ready. Yeah. You can find us on Instagram, Two Girls Talk Transits, sorry, with an S, and TikTok. And yes, you can find me heal.on earth on Instagram. And Maddie, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at maddie.delrae, and my website is maddiedelrae.com, and we'll see you all next week.
See you.
Bye.